I'm in a portion of East End where I guess in the past there was evidence that the plot of land I got on my house, it's tiny, it's 1/10 of an acre. But there was evidence, I saw like volunteer eggplants come up, they had some citrus trees. And so, you know, it was pretty much, I'm gonna show you guys some before and after pictures as we go along. But it wasn't much to work with, but slowly but surely, I guess I'm on my 4th year into this now. You know, I'm starting to see a food forest emerge, and I didn't approach it in any specific kind of way, really trying to. All I know is, like you guys, I have a passion for growing. For me, it's edibles. Pretty much anything that I can push to grow in Houston that's edible, I'm gonna throw it in there, you know, especially if I like it. And yeah, so that's the basic premise. But it's kind of, you'll see some pictures, I'm gonna show some video, and it's slowly evolving into a forest here. So to reiterate, this is a picture of me a couple of weeks ago harvesting a nice rack of namwas. Pretty nice catch there. I'm not doing anything too special to them other than throwing a lot of mulch, and you'll see in some video later, you can kind of see him in the background there. There's a goat right there. So I put a lot of goat and chicken manure in there and all my other trees. I'm not going to get into the depths of the farming aspect because this is more just about the fruit trees and the perennials versus annuals kind of aspect of it. But yeah, just a tidbit about me. Went to the University of Houston. I'm primarily a videographer / photographer, and more recently a YouTuber when it comes to gardening, because I have the skill set as a videographer, and I figure I'm learning so much that even me talking right now, this whole premise is to get the word out there, get more people excited about it. You guys will see the time span in some of these pictures I'm going to show you that it's been a relatively short time. I'm also a single father. I work full time. I have 2 kids, and these are like just little weekend projects of, you know, COVID helped, I'll admit, working from home a little bit. But a lot of this is just weekend projects. I'll plant, like, especially when I was beginning, you know, I'd plant a bed here, I'd plant a tree there, and it slowly kind of evolved, and it's still evolving. I don't know what quite to call it yet. I'm gonna call myself an urban farmer for the time being. And I'm not like cutthroat permaculturalist, but I do have a lot of permaculture principles. And for anyone who doesn't know, the basic gist of that is mimicking nature. And rather than fighting a lot of the troubles you may come into, you kind of go with it and find a creative outlet, or, you know, sometimes you have to cut losses here or there. But the main thing is working with nature rather than against it. The opposite of the monoculture farms you're seeing that are destroying our water system amongst tons of other things. But yeah, that's the gist. This next slide is going to give you guys, I don't know how many people know me or have seen my channel. I'm not very popular yet, but this is my trailer. And so I'm gonna have to open it in another window, but I'm gonna play my YouTube trailer that really gives the entire gist of what I'm doing, what it's all about. It's less than 5 minutes, so but I think it'll give you guys a much better perspective of where I'm coming from. So I'm gonna turn off that present, and I'm gonna bring up that video real quick. Okay. All right, so we'll start from the top, let that load up. And I'm gonna look at the chat here. If the volume is good, you guys let me know if it needs to be louder or softer.
This is Al Haradim Querido. I started this channel back in 2008, not only to document and learn for myself, but also to share my journey with you guys. I established this food forest in Houston, Texas, Zone 9A, a little more than 2 years ago. I cleared out the land starting from scratch, and I started planting fruit trees, nitrogen fixers, and also made a koi pond. I brought chickens with me and later integrated goats to not only have my own eggs and meat, but also have a source of dairy. The livestock is an incredibly important aspect of this farm. Not only am I getting milk and eggs, but in turn, I'm also getting fertilizer that's being used on all these trees around me, and vegetables. In turn, I'm also feeding these animals some of the fruit that I'm growing, and so it's a closed cycle. I'm on 1/10 of an acre, so I don't have a lot of land to work with. So it takes a lot of careful planning to make this not only permaculturally functional, but aesthetically appealing as well. Things are constantly not only changing with time, but with the seasons as well. So not only am I growing my own food and raising my own animals, I'm also sharing all sorts of skills like seed germination, cloning, plant propagation, grafting, stuff that any homesteader, farmer, gardener, or really anyone should know. With such a small piece of land to work on, it's important to utilize some of these techniques like grafting to save space. So whether you're new to gardening or you just want to learn how to plant fruit trees or raise animals humanely, consider subscribing and join me on my journey towards self-sufficiency in an urban environment.
So yeah, as I was saying, hopefully that gave you guys a better picture, so I can kind of start walking you guys through. I'm not going to give you exactly how to kind of thing, because I don't think that's the nature of this. I think it's more of, because it's not like everything that I've done is perfect or anyone knows the exact right way to go about this, but I'm sharing my experience and yeah, basically just how things started, evolved, where they're going, and sharing, you know, any kind of helpful information with you guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring the slides back up. And sorry guys, give me just a moment. I may have accidentally X'd out of that. Stand by for just a moment. Okay. All right, so let me bring that back up for you guys. Okay, can everyone see that? You good?
Yes.
Okay, so why a food forest? And that's more of for me, it's integrating more perennials, prioritizing them over annuals, because perennials, once established, they're a lot lower maintenance. They may be a little more costly to establish, but in the grand scheme of things, your ROI, I guess, your return on investment seems to be much higher with, say, a fruit tree. You can find a fruit tree, especially in like a big lot store or something, when it's the end of the season. You can find fruit trees for, 15, $20 sometimes. And if you're gonna, you may find them for $40 as well, but the amount of fruit you're gonna get in 5 to 7 years, it's huge. The other aspect of this is the food forest aspect, like establishing this infrastructure and building microclimates. And also, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Mycorrhiza Association, but basically the fungal network that is due to a no-till kind of environment, and food forests and trees and perennials, things that aren't going to be dug up every year and retilled. And you're basically, I do it about 2 times out of the year, where all I'm doing is adding more and more organic matter and building up rather than taking down. So yeah, in the long term, they're a lot lower maintenance. Really, it's just fertilizing, and that can be very minimal, and really just pruning. And that's kind of a preference too. Part of this aspect of me working on 1/10 of an acre is that I have to keep everything relatively small. And I'm also planting really dense, but a lot of that coincides with microclimate. And I know they say like keep trees 10 feet apart and stuff. I'm in some of these groups and I see people starting like a food forest, and they have this huge plot of land, and their trees are tiny little trees are being planted scattered all around, and there's no protection. So, if a cold freeze hits and you have a new citrus, you have a new lime or something, I've had it happen too. I'm sharing this because I'll show you some of the before pictures when I first started planting things, and they're very vulnerable in that state. So part of that food forest concept is, I'll go into it a little more in the next few slides, but planting or even working with what you natively have that's well established, because those are what's called like nurse trees, and they can actually help protect some of your trees against both frost and, our summers are really bad too. I've actually lost a few trees. They've been scorched, avocados and stuff like that. So I think I've covered most of this. This is a long-term investment, a little more expensive to establish, but the yield is a little bit delayed. I don't know how long some of you guys have been gardening, and yeah, Linda says most plants want to be together, and couldn't agree more with that. But I know that time flies, and some of this stuff that I'm planting, even from seed, people are like, oh, it's going to take 10 years. Oh, a lot of seedlings only take, like a peach, I think, can produce in like 2 years, whereas a lot of them, could be 5 to 7, but it flies. And in the establishment of a food forest and getting all your fruit trees in early, that's why I'm kind of like, I'm prioritizing that now, because once they're all in, I can focus on annuals and do what everyone else does, and look at the almanac and plant what I need to at the time being. But when you look at people who just do annuals and they're all raised beds, that's a lot of work every season, and so for me, this is like, maybe it appeals to me because it's a little less maintenance, even though, like I said, that infrastructure is very important. The first couple of years you're putting in a lot of work, but down the road, it's not quite as tedious, and it's more enjoyable. So we talked about the canopy, microclimates, typically an extended growing season as well. You can do this with annuals to some extent, but at least with me, variety-wise, the way I'm trying to stagger and plant things, the more varieties you have, the more diversity you have, I'm trying to make it so that at any point in time during the year, I have access to some kind of fruit. You'll have stone fruits like peaches and stuff that just pop off in a month. And one of my workarounds for that is grafting. Like I'll graft a bunch of varieties on one tree to extend that season. But even just having a variety of other sorts of fruit trees helps too. So where to start? I touched on this a little bit. Working with what you have. Some people may not even know it if they're completely new to gardening. I know that in clearing out the lot that I had, I actually cut out a really well-established mulberry, although I think I knew it like as I was doing it, or maybe I saw like a shoot come up later and I'm like, oh, now I know that was a mulberry. Same with a lot of historic places in Houston tend to have a lot of pecans, different nut trees. So just kind of, and some of it is just good for chop and drop, nitrogen fixing trees and stuff like that. So the first thing is to kind of don't just chop out everything, kind of look around. Sometimes I'll even encourage not mowing the lawn for a while and letting things sprout, both trees sprouting, weeds sprouting, and see what you have to work with. You'd be surprised. So yeah, in Houston 9A, our zone, I'd suggest loquats are simple, super simple. Like I have them popping up everywhere just from birds dropping them from neighbors. Mulberries, I have even wild mulberries. They're really vigorous, and those are one of my go-to main nursing trees. Behind my property, I've had some pop up. I dug them out. I put them next to some of my more sensitive plants, and that's mostly for shade when we get up into those triple digits. Moringa grows really fast. I popped a seed in the ground. 2 years later, it's 20 feet high. Timing is kind of tricky on those. It has to be in the spring or else the winter will get them. Papaya and bananas, although they're herbaceous technically, they're really great. A papaya, you can almost get fruit in a year, and you can also get a decent canopy if you plant a clump there. Bananas, same thing. I tend to I don't thin mine out that much, and I tend to like right now they're more cold hardy because I'm not thinning them out and I'm letting them bunch up and protect each other. And so once you have kind of that infrastructure established, you can start working with the bushes, the understory, and less adapted varieties, which is what I'm doing now. Like I've got like soursops planted and stuff, and I'll show off things in groups and people will be like, you're an idiot, that's gonna die. I've had a jackfruit in the ground for going on 2 years now. It's been through hard freezes. Avocado seedlings, same thing. So you'd be surprised. While I say like know your growing zone, you can also, push it a little bit, but just, don't get ridiculous with it. So the anatomy of a food forest, that canopy, that's what I'm talking about, like those fast growing or, even nut trees, the taller trees. You have your lower tree layer, dwarf and fruit trees, shrub layer, berries and currants. I have all sorts of different like bush cherries and stuff and blackberries that are great for that. The herbaceous, not quite the papaya and the banana, but more like comfreys, beets and herbs. The rhizosphere would be your root vegetables, potatoes and such, carrots. The soil surface cover could be strawberries. I love trying to cover crop with strawberries. There's a lot of clover that comes up. People call them weeds. Some of these weeds are actually really beneficial and they're a natural mulch. The biggest thing about regenerative gardening in general is that you don't want soil exposed. So whether that's throwing in a bunch of mulch, whether it's chop and drop, you want to protect that soil because of everything under it that's living. You have bacteria, you have fungi, you have a lot of things contributing to the fertility of your plants. And then you have a vertical layer, climbers and vines, which I'm starting to experiment with more instead of making a trellis for cucumbers and such, I'll just throw them wherever, near the moringa or near certain trees and see what they do. So I've dabbed on that a little bit, the polyculture versus monoculture. There's a lot of benefits to polyculture in general. The monoculture is what you see on the right, your farm. Most of the time, they're genetically modified, so you can spray the hell out of them with pesticides. And it's not just that, it's the fact that they have to be sprayed so much because they are vulnerable. This variety of whatever it is, whether it's corn, whatever, if you have that much all together in the same spot, they're vulnerable in a number of different ways. Most prevalent would be pests because, the pest doesn't have to look anywhere. They're all right there, and, they keep breeding and keep producing and multiplying, and that's what happens. The benefits of polyculture too is instead of just bringing in pests, you're bringing in all sorts of wildlife. And if they say with permaculture, there's like a 7-year wait. And at that 7-year mark, like things may be falling apart and this and that, but when you get to 7 years, everything starts balancing. And say you have aphids or you have pest problems, well, with enough time, enough predatory pests and beneficial insects come in and kind of even all that out. But you give them the variety, you give them options, and like it would be in the wild, and things naturally have an equilibrium eventually. The extended growing season, of course, if you're over here, you got one shot. If you have a greenhouse, maybe you have 2 shots. Over here, things come and go at all times of the year. It's awesome. And I'm sorry, I'm just looking at chat here, taking a glance. Yes, hopefully you will have an access to recording. Yeah. So, and more importantly, the polyculture is less destructive. It's regenerative. Where this side, I've heard of people like, I guess you could plant cover crops and till them under and stuff. People are trying to make this less destructive, but the whole notion of commercial farming is destructive. I touched on this a little bit, knowing your growing zone. Most of the local nurseries are they're gonna carry varieties that cater to our growing zones, or else everyone would be returning their fruit trees saying they died. So that's one good thing. And I mention that because if you start being like me and getting experimental and ordering things off Etsy and things like that, you need to do a little research and know what's going to work in your area, because sometimes I get a little too adventuresome. But so not every tree is going to be productive in your area. There are different varieties of each kind of tree though. So we may have a low chill hour peach that works better, like the snow peach. I have that in my yard. Same with apples, stuff like that. So there's cold hardiness and chill hours are really the 2 big factors for me when I'm looking at things. Not everything can tolerate where we dip down to. We're going to be in the low 30s the next couple days. And at the same token, you may not get fruit if you plant an apple tree that's adapted to the north. So do a little research before you make the investment. And microclimates and pushing your growing zone can help get more of a variety. That's what I'm doing. Like I said, I have soursop in the ground. I have jackfruit. I'm starting to push here. I don't want to brag and say it'll be a success before it's too late, but at least I'm trying. So feeding your trees. I'm a big fan of the gist of this back to Eden method, which is pretty much saying trees eat trees. If no one's familiar with that, in a nutshell, it's basically using lots and lots of mulch, especially when you're establishing a food forest. This is mainly for trees, although it does work with annuals and vegetables and stuff. But it's fungal dominated rather than bacterial, and so bacterial dominated soil is better for your annuals, where this fungal soil is better for perennials. So in my gist, when I'm planting a tree, I'm gonna knock the bulb around a little bit and loosen up the roots. And basically I dig a larger parameter and I'll amend the soil. In Houston, Texas, I know me personally, I have a really high clay content. And so I'm getting a lot of organic material in there early on. And I also plant a little bit raised because we're on a floodplain. It doesn't necessarily flood that much where I'm at, but Harvey hit, a few other of these tropical storms hit, and I've lost some trees over planting them in grade with, and I'll show you guys some pictures later that illustrate that. And then I top them with about at least 3 to 5 inches of wood chips to begin at least. While they're young, those are gonna slowly break down and feed the tree. And always be sure not to mulch directly around the trunk. You want to kind of leave the trunk bare and kind of berm it up around the roots there. So I usually try to mulch biannually, twice a year. You guys can try to reach out to Chip Drop. It's called chipdrop.com. And supposedly it's a network in which they'll drop off wood chips if you sign up. Maybe if you give them a $20 tip or something. I've never had them come to me. So I've contacted some local arborists and they'll drop off chips. And these are raw chips, meaning that it's a fresh tree, leaves and all, not commercial wood chips. Because commercial wood chips, actually those dyed wood chips can actually be bad for your trees. So the more down to earth and raw it is, so that stuff from the arborist, that's like gold. And once your food forest is more established, you can start doing chop and drop, and I'll go into that a little more. But if I'm pruning, I kind of wish I had my own chipper, but as I'm pruning and I have certain things like nitrogen fixers and stuff that I'll just chop and drop, literally. Chop them up pretty small with a machete or something and drop them all at the bases of the trees. They slowly decompose. They're protecting the soil. And you can also, I wouldn't buy, I'd use organic fertilizers personally, but you can buy fertilizer. I use goat and chicken manure a lot. I use seaweed extract as a foliar feed on occasion. And like I said, occasionally the organic fertilizer, for certain specialty things like palms or citrus or avocados that may not have access to those nutrients with just wood chips. So microclimates, I'll illustrate this right after this slide, but using them to your advantage. This is a rough illustration of kind of the gist, but a lot of it's windbreak, some of it's shade, some of it's keeping thermal mass, keeping the sun's warmth in the vicinity so you're not getting fluctuating temperatures. If you guys didn't know, it's not necessarily the cold that kills so much as a rapid temperature fluctuation. So if we get a cold snap, that's why people cover their trees and stuff, because it slows that down. But if you're out in a field and get a cold snap, that tree's gonna feel it, just like that. So some things you can do is like planting on a south-facing wall for more cold hardiness. Thermal mass, like I mentioned, in my case, I have a fairly large koi pond in the middle of all my tropicals. Planting a windbreak around the perimeter, I'll illustrate that later with some pictures. Planting dense, like I said, it may come to bite me later, but I don't necessarily plant trees 10 feet apart. And it kind of depends on the variety and stuff. If you have a walnut, you have a big nut tree, give it some space. But certain plants get along pretty well with one another. I just saw anyone having problems with the citrus this season. I don't want to veer too far off of that, but I have a citrus catastrophe. You guys saw that I have goats. They came with the property, but I had a grapefruit and another type of orange in that goat pen. And after all that rain, like 6 months ago, I guess I couldn't clean up the manure fast enough, and the soil around there got really saturated and basically drowned and killed these citrus trees that were probably like 25, 30 years old. But yeah. But also I've had a lot of leaf mining issues too. Let's see. Shade/nurse trees are good for those seedlings and younger plants. Like I said, I use mulberries. Fast-growing trees are great for this early on, and I've named some of those before. The mulberries, papaya, moringa. I put papaya there twice, but also those loquats shoot up pretty quick too. All right, so I'm going to try to show you guys this video to illustrate microclimate real quick. This was our last little cold snap we had. I think it went down to like 34 or something, right around freezing. But let me switch that real quick. This video is not going to play right there. So let me bring up that slide. Wait, I'll have to share a window. The tab. Okay, so this must be it. Okay.
What's up, guys? It's 36 degrees in Houston, and I just wanted to illustrate what a microclimate does. Behind me, frost everywhere. Also, you'll see it on my roof. Behind me. But in my yard, there's no frost. And that's a microclimate.
Okay, so hopefully that illustrates the microclimate. But yeah, basically, that's why I have this infrastructure built to the whole principle of the food forest and everything. If you guys have ever, like, I'm from up north in New Jersey, and when you go in the woods, it's usually a different kind of temperature, whether it's a little bit warmer in there or it's a little bit cooler when it's hot outside. So let me get our slides back up. And I think for whatever reason, give me just a sec. For whatever reason, when I switch around like that, it X's it out. Have it up in 2 shakes. And sorry, I'm looking at some of the conversation here. Any questions or input from you guys so far? I'll kind of breeze over any questions you guys have as we go along. So let me bring up that last slide. Okay. Now we're going to get into kind of my progression. I'm going to share with you guys how things have evolved for me. Okay. Someone in chat can give me a thumbs up if we have a visual of the slide there, or any indication.
I see it.
Good. Okay. So this is where I started. This is actually from the realtor ad. This is my looks even smaller without a lot in there. This is one of those citrus trees I was talking about. This is some kind of a fir tree that I eventually just got out of there. I cleaned up a lot of this back here. This is another angle. You guys will see a comparison a little bit, but there's nothing here. It's all lawn. You know, one of the biggest wastes of water in America. And so on the back quarter, this is actually, I actually took all of this out. But this is kind of what I meant, work with what you have. This is actually, could be advantageous in the fact that it's a windbreak, right? And so that's cool. But a lot of these things growing here, some of these vines and stuff, were really invasive. I was getting cut up on thorns and stuff. And personally for me, I wanted a clean slate. I'll show you later, but I've since replaced this with passion fruit vine. So, you know, it's edible. So that's a plus. This is just another, this is me starting to chop everything down here. And also the trees that came with the property, the citrus, they were like way up in the power lines. The fruit was way out of my reach anyway. So it wasn't all that great for me. This is the early stage. This is like a little more than a year into, and you start seeing it take shape. It looks, you know, nice. We're getting there. I was all giddy thinking like, I wasn't calling this a food forest yet or anything, but I started, you know, getting a vision, started feeling things. It's evolved a lot more since then. And that's the other thing. It's your personal preference. I'm not saying everyone go out and do a food forest. I'm just going over what I like to do, the advantages. And my whole principle of gardening in general is, you know, you listen to something like this, take away what you want to take away from it, because not everyone, you know, not everything works the same way for everyone. And that's a lot of, you know, how I've adapted. This is my front lawn. Not a tree in sight. There's like a stump right here I had to dig out eventually, but you guys will see how that evolves in a minute. Where I'm going, I showed you guys this picture here before. This is the exact same angle, less than 4 years later, which I haven't done all that much here. That's more kind of just something nice to look at, but it's all edible. Looking back the same way, I've since put in a huge goat pen. We have all of this fence line is covered all the way around with all sorts of different fruit trees and bushes and things to chop and drop. So this will kind of start. I took these pictures like literally yesterday, so I at least gave you guys the video to see how things should look. You're all gardeners. You all know that this isn't the best time to be taking pictures, but I'm doing this to illustrate some of these principles. So some of these trees are deciduous, but what I'm doing here is kind of going across here and blocking some of the wind. Some of it's functional for privacy as well. I have some dormant mulberries here. I have a dormant pomegranate. This is a native lilac up front with the bananas that brings in a lot of beneficials. And I'll show you guys a close-up in a sec, but this is what I do for my garden beds. I just like most of this stuff that are planted in beds would grow at the edge of a forest. So I'll kind of make beds and sporadically kind of put them at the edges and stuff. And even some of the manure I throw down, I get a lot of opportunistic tomatoes and stuff that just pop up from their manure, which is kind of cool. And they pop up where they should on the edge there. So this is, you know, some of my winter stuff. I don't know if zucchini will do all right, but we do have some kales, some radishes, different things in there. And that's bundled up with a dormant Turk's cap hibiscus, which is, they grow wild around here. This is just a closer view of some of the bushes and stuff. And like I said, these are all dormant trees and stuff, but I'm kind of overlapping with bushes, and I didn't know if someone was trying to tell me anything. Do I let my goats roam? Natasha, they would devour everything if I did. I'd love to. I'm thinking of trying to let them roam behind my property, behind my fence, but they're not quite trained enough to do that yet. And berries that I'm incorporating, the berries are getting sufficient light. I'm doing blueberries, which I'm not awesome at because of soil acidity and stuff and our water pH. They're a little tough. They're fine, but I killed a few blueberries in the past and they're not all that productive yet. But even in here, I've got like a Barbados cherry. I've got what was labeled a bush cherry, but it's a sub kind of tropical cherry that's pretty good. I'm utilizing rosemary as a bush here too, as an understory, but that's just another angle of that. Oh, back here is a cinnamon tree. They're right there with avocados. Like some of these cold spurts should have taken this out, and it hasn't, because I have my house on this side, this house here, also utilizing some of those structures. This is what I mean about chop and drop. This is like one of my go-tos, Mexican sunflower. They grow really crazy, especially in the warmer months. But this is providing not only shade, these will grow super tall and they'll provide shade, and as needed you can chop them down, remulch with them. But they're also good for frost protection. I have a mandarin behind here that's kind of young, could probably use the protection. This is a south-facing wall too, so it hasn't had any problems this year or the past few years. As far as saving space, this is like a 9-in-1 stone fruit tree, like nectarines, pluots, all sorts of stuff. But that's it's probably not the best to have it on the south-facing wall with a chill hour factor, because I want this to have more chill hours, but live and learn. But it's kind of like my prize piece. What was it called again? Yeah, Mexican sunflower. Okay, here's the backyard we're getting into. And this isn't like a formal tour showing you every single thing. I'm just highlighting, as I was walking around, I'm like, how can I illustrate some of these principles? I told you this was planted early last year, but this is white sapote. But you can see here how this is the ground level, and it's bermed up a little bit. And actually, as it matures more, it'll probably settle in and be, you know, just a little bit over. But I piled up the organic matter, kind of mixed it in with the clay, and I started with it up here because guess what? There's water right there from the past couple days. My lawn is saturated. And what's happening here is, like, it started as a lawn. I didn't cover the whole thing in wood chips, but instead of the grass taking over now, it's kind of like the grass is pretty much like my paths now. So as we move on, that's just another angle, but this illustrates that barrier over here, the wind barrier, which is, like I said, mulberries, bananas, all sorts of stuff. And that's just me showing off some bananas that are still hanging on. And I just harvested some recently. This is the goat pen. I'm probably going to have to add more material in here just because so much manure piles up over time. It's fine when it's not raining, but there's just so much rain. But it is kind of good that all the rain saturates that and it feeds everything surrounding it, which is kind of good. And I'll actually manually clean this out and mulch everything with that. And so you'll see like a typical bed that I just kind of have sporadically around. This is that moringa I'm talking about. 2 years. It's huge. Let me go back to that. And I'll just plant stuff around the base of these beds and stuff. Swiss chard, I have, I think, mustard greens, collard greens, whatever will grow at this time of year. And this is just showing you, again, a close-up of that bed of that white sapote. But look, that's a volunteer tomato that should not be springing up right now, but it is. Poblano pepper, kales. But that's kind of the gist of what I'm doing. Things will grow under trees as long as it's not like a super dense willow or a walnut tree that, you know, where roots just take over. And that's just another angle of, you know, this wall here that I've made, functioning both for privacy. Sorry, I'm looking at some of these. Moringa doesn't die back in the winter. Mine defoliate. I have had some in my early stages die completely back because they didn't have protection from everything. But it's best to plant those as seedlings in the spring so they have all year to get big and be tough enough for the winter. And how easy is it to clean up the manure after mulching? Not sure I quite, like for me, I get a rake and I go into that goat pen and I basically, it's mixed in with all the hay that they drop. And so I just put it in a bag, it's all dry, and I mulch around. Goat manure is like rabbit pellets. You can like almost pick them up and it's not that gross. It's not like cow manure or something. That's just under the moringa, what a typical bed could look like, you know, cabbages and stuff. And ultimately, Like I said, these beds are probably going to grow and grow and grow. I do want to keep some of my lawn for my kids, but you know, that's kind of just how it's evolving. This is just a red ruby guava, but this is kind of pointing towards the more tropical edge. I have papayas here with fruit on them, banana with fruit. This is my koi pond, and I'll show you a better angle of that. And like lemongrasses and stuff. I have all sorts of things sporadically in there. This is just, you know, a beehive. As long as I'm showing you everything else, this is just a nice little tidbit to incorporate. Why not have the bees instead of trying to bring them to me? This is to illustrate that, like I said, there's no certain rule. I have a raised bed here with all sorts of annuals. I have, you know, a very urbanized raised bed here with a fig in it and a guava. This is just, I think I was trying to grow some of this. I forget what it's called, but it's an invasive aquatic plant, but you can mulch with this, so it's good for organic material. So I was just, I just have that there, growing some mulch. These are some of my tropicals and stuff. They're on the fence line here. They're protected by my neighbor's building here. I have thermal mass in my pond on this side, and everything's doing pretty well here. I've got like black sapote, sweet sop, sour sop, and I have the Mexican sunflower growing all in between them, giving them additional frost protection. This is the koi pond. I have a bunch of that invasive stuff and everything growing in there, but that's also providing a little cover for the pond so my fish don't get too cold. Koi fish in there. But this is also good for fertilizer too. I can scoop out water and fertilize anything that I want. Lots of nutrients in there. My back fence here, passion fruit's not doing. I think it got rot. All this was super filled up, and I started from scratch again last year and replanted some vines, but it's filling out. This is an avocado that actually, before I had things well established, this froze to the rootstock, and I'm just letting it come back up and get hardy. Maybe it'll, you know, an avocado is an avocado to me. This is just a papaya, still has fruit on it, productive all year round. Although if we get a cold snap, the fruit can be more susceptible to pests and rot and stuff, but they're still there. But this papaya is also providing a microclimate for this cherry de Rio Grande. It's not very cold tolerant, but so far it's doing great under the canopy there. And this is just a view of the banana trees from the other side, which I have sporadically all about. That's that guava again. Actually, it has a canopy above it, and it's acting as a canopy as well. And showing off some bananas. This is just showing you something nice and functional, like multifunctional, is bamboo. It's great for protection and, you know, shade and frost, but it's also functional in the part that it's bamboo. I can use them for stakes and stuff. And this was if we had time. I'm gonna go ahead and point you guys to my channel. This is like a formal food forest tour, but it's like 40 minutes long. I didn't know that I'd be able to talk this consistently for the duration. So sorry, I didn't mean to play that. So you guys may want to check out my channel on your own time, because I don't want to go on for 2 hours here. So I'm going to turn that off. And I guess we can open it up towards questions, even if you guys want to raise your hand. And I guess at this point, we can go one at a time and you can turn on your mics, I guess. I don't know how we usually do this, Linda.
Yeah. There is a raise your hand button. If you move your mouse to the bottom, you can raise your hand if you want to ask something, or ask it in the chat.
What did you guys think? You make me feel weird. I'm all vulnerable talking.
I'm impressed.
You're impressed? Thank you. And like I said, this was...
There's usually more.
Oh, go ahead.
I just say there's usually more people asking questions.
Yeah. Like I said,
Or did
these are
someone-
like little weekend things, but if you're persistent and enough time goes by, that's what I meant by this like 7-year thing. Like, oh, it's going to take 7 years to produce. No, like you put in your time. I do it because I'm passionate about it. You know, things happen and it's cool. Because I look back on some of those pictures and I thought I was, you know, the king back then. I was like starting my YouTube. I'm like, I'm growing some fruit trees. That was nothing. And I may even look back now and be like, you know, this was nothing. So it's all about just having enough enthusiasm and persistence to keep going at it. Because I've had some fails too. I've had trees die. That's why I'm sharing some of this stuff with you guys, because there's trial and error, and but there's a lot of wins too. So it's pretty cool.
Okay, you talk about all your shade covering. Do you have an issue though where you plants that need sunlight that you're blocking out? How do you kind of that in?
I'm starting to get to that phase, and that's what I mean about things evolving. Some of these chop and drops, it's like it's no big deal for me to chop some of this Mexican sunflower that starts towering over things. But as things evolve, you kind of have to weigh things out. It takes a little planning beforehand. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to plant things under an oak tree or a walnut tree or a pecan tree. But usually I'll do things in close-ish proximity that will tend to compete with each other. Maybe they'll get a little bit leggy or something. But a lot of that is, this is fruit for me. So a lot of these trees, whether they're dwarf or not, I'm going to go in and manually cut things down as needed. But yeah, every spring or you know, even in the winter or whenever, I'm gonna have to go through and start pruning things. And I've already started getting there, and that's something I'm okay with. But it will need that maintenance. If you completely neglect this, the reason why I pack so tightly is because I'm on a 1/10 of an acre. You know, I would say loosen things up if you can help it, and you know, a lot for that. A lot. I think my tallest thing in there right now is like 15 feet, which isn't crazy. I have some of these bananas and stuff that are like 15 feet, but a lot of these herbaceous trees like papaya and bananas, you can literally cut them down with a machete in one swipe. Like if I decide, you know, I can replant them somewhere else that works better. So I haven't had any deal breakers yet that just kill everything. But that was a good question though. Yes, Howard.
I didn't realize I had a question.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll pass on Howard.
Enjoyed the program. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Is there anyone else? I'm sorry. Now I'm looking at the chat bar. Sorry for neglecting you guys. Let's see. What type of bamboo? Oh, yeah, Tara. Definitely go with clumping and not running. And I don't know, some of these I've actually found places I'm like, oh, bamboo. The way you can see if bamboo is clumping or running, if you run your finger around it and it's completely smooth, it's clumping. If there's an indentation in it, like kind of like a variegation, that's the running. And yeah, that could be a mess. Let's see. Are there any plants, trees, shrubs you regret planting? I've had things that aren't that favorable to me, and I'm gonna get, as things get crowded, I'm gonna get to a point where I'm gonna have to say, like, cut my losses and say it's not worth it. Like that papaya I highlighted, that was one of my first papaya. It's grown back from different freezes. I really don't care for the taste of it. I got it from like Fiesta or something. I threw the seeds on the ground. It sprouted up, but the goats love it, and it keeps growing, and I eat it green. So there are things where I'm like, you know, there's nothing that I hate. I will say I just did a video on pruning jujubes, and if you guys don't know what jujubes are, they have these runner shoots, and they're really thorny. So if you don't keep up with them, they could be a nightmare. But the whole video is about how to keep up with them. So I've been keeping up with it. I just got to it really late because I was doing kind of an experiment. But there are gonna be things that I start favoring over other things, but to me, it's part of the process and it's not a big deal to me. What are your top 3 most favorite items? I'm a big fan of the bananas just because they're going so crazy. I have 4 different varieties now. Orinoco and Namwa have been fruiting for me already like crazy. I just planted Pisang Kalang, which is a very unknown variety, but it tastes like strawberry cheesecake, apparently. And the other one is ice cream banana. I haven't tried it yet. But that and for some reason that's the only thing that comes to mind. I love that multi-grafted stone fruit. I haven't gotten any fruit because I've been so busy pruning it back and grafting onto it. But hopefully this spring I'm gonna have like 7 different types of stone fruit. That's gonna be awesome. So I'm gonna go to 2 on that because I'm trying to get to everyone. Let's see, J.A. What do you do when the papaya gets too high? Reach the fruit. I have some like that, and I use those because I have so many papaya around as a diversion for the birds, actually. But if I only had 1 papaya, not everyone knows this, but you could cut it down and it'll start branching, which is pretty cool. Because I've had frost damage and I've had to cut them down, and that's what they do. So they'll branch out lower. That's what that 1 papaya I showed you guys did from the frost. It went almost directly to the ground and it started coming up. So that was pretty cool. Let's see. Most things will start producing shade. They just don't produce as much. Yes, Linda. And to be honest, a lot of these things in Houston could afford some filtered shade, especially in the summer. I will say, like Linda's saying, some of these kales and stuff that are under trees, but I also plant on deciduous trees. So by the time they lose their leaves, they're getting enough sun. So it's kind of just, you gotta finesse it. Michelle, I just added compost material to my garden that my chickens helped me with. I've got chip drop pile. My question is, should I add the mulch to the bed to prepare for spring planting? Yes, and how much? Let's see. Yeah, as long as when you're working with chicken manure, it can be hot. They call it hot. Chicken manure needs to break down a little bit, but if it's been around organic material like mulch and hay and stuff like that, it's probably been broken down enough. I would mulch, if it were up to me, I'd mulch as we're hitting winter, because the mulch insulates and helps keep things, retains moisture. There's a lot of benefits to mulch that I didn't go into. But also, by the time that winter mulch breaks down, it's usually starting to get into the hotter months, and I would definitely prioritize mulching in the hotter months. Thickness, I would say 3 to 5 inches is good. Just watch the trunk. You have mulch around the trunk, you start getting pests, fungal issues, diseases. Mulch shouldn't be right against the trunk. Papaya leaves are supposed to be good for cancer. I've heard that too. I think I tried guava leaf tea. I don't think I've messed with the papaya leaves yet, but I think the papaya leaves are supposed to be as a tea. I don't think you could just eat them raw. Where do you source most of your, Eliza? Where do you source most of your trees and shrubs? I will say from all over the place. I started with a place called Quality Feed and Garden just because I had chickens and that's where I'd get my chicken feed. JRN Nursery, they have a few different locations. They have, like, if you want those exotic trees that you can't find anywhere, they're a go-to. There's one, it has a super simple name, but it's like Vietnamese. It's somewhere down like 45 a little bit. Tom's Nursery, it's called. I did a video on that too, as well as JRN. They have some exotic trees, and these like JRN and stuff, I believe they're Vietnamese owned. They tend to sell stuff a lot cheaper. And then I have, like, if I can't find them anywhere, I might buy some seedlings on Etsy or something, which can be hit or miss. And I showed you in that intro video, I do a lot of propagation of my own. So I experiment. I do things from seed and stuff too. Natasha, I'm in zone 3B, Wisconsin. Wow, welcome to Texas. Shortest growing season. The land I come with a garden where trial and error gardening for the past 2 years. The soil is thick. Sorry, it just ran away from me. The soil is thick, clay, and after digging down, my carrots are stunted. What are the best ways to get them to grow better? Okay, I have similar clay issues, although my clay isn't that bad. It's high clay content, but it's not like compacted or anything. But I've heard, I forget what it's called, some kind of a fork, but there's a fork you can drive in and break up that clay. It goes about like maybe 2 to 3 feet down, and broad forking. So if you broad fork that and then get a lot of organic material, maybe spread the material over it first and then broad fork it so it can start working into that soil. You can also plant daikons and different root crops that'll start breaking that up. And also mulch. Mulching also helps with starting to regulate clay too. Most people use it in like Florida when they have sand, so it breaks down and gets more organic. But it goes both ways. It'll also loosen up soil. Because another thing with clay is if it gets baked, too much moisture is bad for it. Too little moisture is bad for it. So if you regulate it with mulch, because it'll get baked into literally a clay when it's hot, and then it'll either run water off or get super saturated when it's wet. So those are ideas for that. I got a thank you. Yeah, and the wow for Wisconsin. I wish I had more information on like how to help you up there. I'm actually from New Jersey, and I never really gardened. I do have a YouTube friend that I follow, and I kind of see what he does up there. But yeah, I'm like, part of me is lucky to be in Houston for the variety that I can grow, but there's things I can't grow too. And like when we're in the dead of summer and all my tomatoes die, kind of goes both ways. So there are, although your growing season isn't very extended, if I lived up north, I'd probably invest in like a really good big greenhouse too, because you could really push how much you could grow there. I've seen citrus and stuff grow in Canada, so under a greenhouse. And
can I chime in?
But the days are
go ahead. I'm sorry.
the days are long in the summertime though, so you get a lot of sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do get a lot of sun in the back. And I was thinking, like, I had got this greenhouse frame from a guy on Craigslist for free, and I never really put it up, but I'm thinking about doing it this year because I'm getting upset that the growing season isn't as long.
Yeah.
But then I figure, like, I think about how to extend it inside of that greenhouse. What are some ways? Because I'm also trying to build a community garden, so this is the first time I'm thinking about doing the forest pieces. So that it's actually accessible and people can walk around and, have access to fresh produce. But how do you expand that into a greenhouse?
Well, there's plenty of fruit trees that grow well there. You just look for what's meant to grow in that area. They'll do fine outside.
I can, I'll try to find a link and paste it. Yeah, you'd be surprised. A lot of things, like I'm envious of some of the both perennials and annuals that do better up north. That's what I meant about researching your growing zone and stuff, because you'd be surprised.
Raspberries.
Yeah.
My grandmother grew raspberries.
I have a raspberry. There's raspberries that grow wild.
I can't do raspberries. Yeah. Also, take a walk in some parks and maybe try to find some more urban gardens to get some ideas in your area. But the more you kind of venture out locally, you'd be surprised.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't know if anyone has any more questions.
Apples. They like the cold period.
Yeah, apples. Oof. Yeah. Also, currants. There's a lot of bush plants that do well. Currants and blueberries and stuff. But I
blueberries,
think
cranberries.
Yep.
Rhubarb. Hazelnuts.
I'm actually gonna look up this YouTuber for you, Natasha, because
Yeah, I was gonna ask you.
he does the
Who's that
stack
guy?
reason too and stuff. So let me look him up real quick, and I'll put a link in the chat for you, because I will definitely give him a shout out. But he's up in New Jersey. I don't know what growing zone that is, but he's
Is it James Prigioni?
yeah, James Prigioni.
What's his name?
James Prigioni.
I can look up how to spell it. I don't.
Well, are you talking about the famous permaculturalist?
Yeah,
Was it
he's-
Shepherd? I want to say Alan Shepherd, but
no, it's not him. But he
there's
has a lot of
famous
mentors.
permaculturalist there.
He has a lot of mentors that he, like Paul Gauci and stuff, that he's learned from. That he gives a lot of gratitude towards.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, he's up in that growing zone. So,
Okay.
but I learned the Back to Eden method from him, and then dug deeper. But I've always mulched trees, but I didn't know the dynamics and stuff. And I just thought it was, at first I thought when I was first beginning, I thought it was like an aesthetic thing, like, oh, mulch your trees. But no, that's food. That's like the best fertilizer nature can buy.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? I didn't know that I was capable of talking this much.
Yeah.
Well, if not, I'm going to I'm gonna find my link and paste it down in there for you guys to check out. I've got like over 100 videos. I started out like you guys. I don't know how far along you are. You may be further along than me. I don't even know, but I started off as a hobbyist looking at videos, and I learned a lot. So I'm trying to, I don't know why I can't find my, there it is. But anyway, the whole reason I started YouTubing was to share the wealth. So that's my personal channel. And yeah, most of it's tutorials, because I'm still learning, but like grafting and propagation and stuff, those are all really good tools to have, especially if you're on a budget. Yeah, they're just good tools to have. But if no one has anything else to say,
Okay.
I might call it a night.
Yeah. I think we'll call it a night. Yep.
Well, I appreciate
Okay.
everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.